Hi, welcome back to Celebrating Culture. Today we're at the Audubon Zoo with Pat Mason, who helped create the swamp exhibit. Pat, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles.
You actually started with Peggy Wilson, I understand.
Well, Peggy Wilson and I started when we were 7 years old.
Wow.
Because we gave a play for the neighborhood and we raised $8.15 for the missions, and we became fundraisers. And then that went on and on. When we were about 40, we were ready to go have a career. We both wanted to make a difference in the community, and the first thing we thought of doing was getting involved in an election, because one thing we noticed is that people who had the power to make things done were elected. And we did a white paper on what we thought was important. There were 3 things we wanted to have happen in this election. It was a mayor's election. Those things were preservation. That's when preservation was just really getting going. And the Louisiana Nature Center. And we wanted the French market to remain a market.
Wonderful.
Instead of a tourist place. We decided we would go to the different candidates and present it to them. And if they agreed, then we'd work for them. And there were 4 major candidates, and we went to see Nat Kiefer first. And he really thought that was a great idea because it was all good government. It was easy to say yes. And we said, we will work for you, and we'll start a women's committee for Nat Kiefer. And we were going to go talk to the other people, but we liked him so much, we just stayed there. And we did have a great time.
Wonderful. Well, from there, though, the Nature Center comes along.
Well, the Nature Center was there as soon as I found out how to raise money. They hired me, which was great, because they had an experienced development person consulting with them, Shep Pleasance, who knew all about development, and he trained me. So it was wonderful for me, and I was paid, and I ended up getting them 2 pots of money, one from the state and one from the feds. Probably the end of the time that the feds were really giving money to a lot of neighborhood things.
Well, fill me in, because there's a transition there. Like you said, the feds, Ronald Reagan gets elected. There's actually a concept of shifting from the government doing things to social philanthropy.
Right, it was, and I was in the right spot, because there weren't organizations that had development offices. They just didn't do that.
You were actually on the Coastal Commission as well.
Yes, and our Coastal Commission was responsible for the end of shell dredging in Lake Pontchartrain, which was the turnaround for Lake Pontchartrain.
You're now at the Greater New Orleans Foundation.
Well, I love the Greater New Orleans Foundation, but I didn't know what it was. Nobody knew what it was. Everybody had a community foundation except us in Houston. And I just could not get over it, because once I got into that and I started understanding all the things it could do, you can do more with your money through the community foundation.
There's a synergy because you're with other philanthropists. That is part of the community foundation, which is nationwide, and here we call it the Greater New Orleans Foundation, but it's part of that national system.
It is.
And you can have donor-advised funds. You can dedicate, if it's the zoo or animals, or boys and girls clubs, or education, you can say, I want my money to go to a certain area. You started that in New Orleans.
Oh yes, and I had the best time.
Today, the Greater New Orleans Foundation at Lee Circle has that fabulous building. I mean, it has grown.
Yeah, I knew it was going to go up. It had to. It's got too many things that are great about it for everybody.
Fill me in on Tulane Medical Center.
That was my next project, which I didn't expect.
That facility is just phenomenal. I mean, was there certain parts of that facility that, as you saw it happening, that you felt could contribute a lot to New Orleans?
Yeah, we had a new team of people that came in. We had our own board, and it all went through in the end with the Tulane Board of Administrators. But basically, we kind of ran our show, and we consisted of medicine and public health. I really liked working with the doctors. We had a wonderful time.
And Tulane is known, I mean, that it got started really as a medical school to work in the Central America on diseases that were going on.
Yeah.
So it's great that Tulane has that presence
in
New Orleans.
It is.
Do you think where we are today is better than where we were pre-Reagan, that the idea of social philanthropy has...
I think we're very much social philanthropy, much more so than before. Yeah, I do, because usually people make better decisions than political decisions. So, yeah, I think it's a much healthier
We've seen like the Zoo to Do. I mean, that was something that you helped to expand. And then these programs now have happened where people get involved and you connect and you get to see your money being used.
You do.
And we have Giving Day now that the Community Foundation.
That I love, yeah, that's really wonderful.
And we also have Giving Tuesday, which I think is right after Thanksgiving.
Right.
So we have, as a country, evolved to give more. I think a legacy is what it comes down to. So many people do want to have that legacy,
yes.
whether it be for the environment or whether it be for education and how their money was used after they moved on.
Yeah. And then you can do something for somebody after you're gone. I mean, you can leave something in your will to any organization, but the Community Foundation really does emphasize that, because otherwise if you want to leave something to some organizations and you leave it with a bank, what happens when that bank gets bought out? What happens when the bank officer leaves? And at least in the Community Foundation, you have a board of directors that knows the community and knows the donors.
Great. Well, Pat, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Charles. This was wonderful.
Thank you for all what you've done for New Orleans. You've transformed the zoo, Tulane, the Greater New Orleans Foundation. You've done so much for the city in your career.
I know.
What a pleasure.
It was nothing.
Okay. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of Celebrating Culture.